Troy here with SFP Nostalgia Motorsports. We are finally building a rear for the Boulevard Bruiser, my '69 Chevelle. The Pontiac rear is really showing its age. Right now, the Chevelle has an 8.2 Pontiac rear with a nodular sender, which is a pretty rare rear. Unfortunately, the POS unit went years ago, and I've been nursing that thing at the drag strip for many years. But now the pinion seal is leaking so bad that it does not retain gear oil in it at all, and it's just leaving a big puddle. So I haven't been able to drag race it this year, let alone drive it much on the street, just because of the gear. I don't want to ruin that rear because it has some sentimental value, but it's also a pretty valuable rear, and I have the ability of rebuilding that and using it in something else someday. So that brings me to, why do I have a 12 bolt here in front of me? The reason being, if I add up how much it's going to cost me to build the 8.2 Pontiac, it's actually slightly cheaper for me to build this 12 bolt. And it just so happens I have one more 12 bolt, this one here, in my inventory. I've had many of these over the years, and I've always been selling them at swap meets because they pull a pretty penny at a swap meet. These are getting hard to find, and they were hard to find when I was a kid, and they're even harder to find now. And when people sell them, they want astronomical amount of money for them. Now, there are several companies out there. DTS is one of them. Mosier, there are a couple other companies that sell them as well. Brand new housings. But the brand new housings cost anywhere from $1,200 to $1,500. And that is way out of my league at the moment. So some of the things, though, that these aftermarket housings bring into the picture is larger bearing caps, larger hardware, so they're extremely strong. Also, the axle tubes themselves are thicker material. They're fully welded with the sender to the tube for added strength so that you don't twist a tube. Also, they have Ford 9-inch axle ends, which are really nice because then you totally eliminate the C-clips and you have bolt-in axle retention, like the way my Pontiac has. My Pontiac is a bolt-in axle rear, which was always cool for me with the drag racing. So to keep this thing cheap, I will likely keep this C-clip axle retention for the moment. I will probably put aftermarket axles in it just because the axles I have, I don't really know the condition of it. To be totally honest, this particular rear I purchased off of a guy that I do some wheeling and dealing with Chevelle parts, and when I looked in the rear I got a really good deal on it, but it was blown. It looked like the pinion gear completely lost its preload, walked back into the carrier and actually messed everything up. So it was a 4 Series carrier that was in here. I had sold that to somebody long ago, and I'm really only left with this housing and axles, of course. But I looked at this and went through this whole thing with my daughter, and we made sure it was straight. Things are looking good with the tubes being straight, because that's always a concern, especially with junkyard type rears or any that have been beat on. These things take abuse, and the axle tubes have a tendency to get tweaked. Now, I'll be honest with you, I see that more with leaf spring cars, the Camaros and Novas, more so than I have with the Chevelle 12 bolts that I've sold. And that's because it comes down to the way the 12 bolt, it's either the fact that it's using lower and upper control arms that kind of keep things centered, or it's the fact that you've got more items welded onto the tube that it's making it more rigid. So whatever the case is, I've heard many different reasons why, but I will tell you that I've seen straighter Chevelle rears than I have Novas and Camaros. So what are we going to do with this thing? I mentioned that it's slightly cheaper to build this than my Pontiac rear. So that's because a lot of the components the 12 bolt's more plentiful than the Pontiac. More people are building them. So that's why parts are a bit cheaper. Now, I ended up buying a kit, And I'm usually leery of kits because there's usually, kits means sometimes you get that where, uh-oh, there's something in there because it's a kit, it's cheaper, so something's junk. But I'll tell you this, I got a kit from Quick Performance and everything in its brand name and it's quality stuff. So the kit I bought for this was around $550 and it included the posi unit, the gear set, the installation kit, and also the gasket for the cover. Now, I'll walk you through this. This was $550. The carrier that I ended up getting with this kit, I wanted the Eaton style. This one here is a Yukon unit. A lot of these are built in the same factory though. So this is a 3 Series unit, which means it'll work for the 3 Series gears. They also have the 4 Series out there. But I wanted a 3 Series because it gave me a little bit more options with the gearing, because I didn't want to get a 4 Series and then have the thing be overgeared for future builds. So this is a 3 Series and 30 spline axles so that I could use the factory style axle in the car. If you get 33 spline, then you get stuck using a particular brand axle because of the pressure angles on the splines. So I can cover that stuff later on if anybody's interested in it. The gear set here is a motive gear set. It's a 390 ratio. So I decided to go with a 390 ratio based on where I'd like my RPM at the track through the traps, and then I come off of that a little bit because I'll walk everybody through that if you're interested. I'll show you how I pick my gear ratio based on my RPM. It's very easy to do and it's actually fun because you can mess around with the RPM your car is going through the traps. But with my car being a dual purpose car, I like to be a little more conservative with the gearing, so I went with a 390 instead of a 410 or a 456 based on what my intentions are in the future for the next engine that I'll build. So 390 gear set, they're motive gears. The kits will either come with I believe Richmond or motive. Richmond or motive, just so you know, they merged together many years ago. Everything's built in the same factory, so if you have brand loyalty there, then you know, things are made in the same factories now. Also, you get your installation kit. You get carrier bearings and you get pinion bearings. Also, they're all quality names, name brand units. So this particular set here, you're either going to get Koyo bearings or Timken bearings. They're both really, really good bearings. You also get your shim kit. You get your hardware for mounting your ring to your differential. You get your crush collar. You get your pinion seal and a pinion nut. You also get your paint for your ring and pinion set so that you can get your backlash all set up correctly. That stuff's all included in it as well, which is nice. Some other little things that I got, instead of using a crush collar, I ended up ordering, I think it was like 10 bucks. I ordered a solid spacer for mine. They just tend to hold up a little bit better and hold up the preload when you're really beating the crap out of the car. So I thought I'd give it a try this time. I've used crush collars before and haven't had an issue. I've also broken rears that had crush collars, but that was because of me actually swapping out a yoke, and when I went and reinstalled everything, I messed up the preload. So that wasn't the fault of the crush collar, that was actually my fault. But either way, I'm going to try that solid spacer. And a yoke. I got a yoke for this rear. Now I had all intentions to use the factory yoke. This is a 1310 series yoke. All 12 bolts use a 1310. It doesn't matter if it was in a Super Sport or whatever. The 1310 was the yoke they used. But the yoke is pretty darn pitted. So I didn't want to run into the same problem I have right now with my Pontiac rear, where I'm losing gear oil at the pinion seal because of a pinion yoke that is bad. So I purchased this. It's a 1350. I didn't need the 1350 yoke, but I did get one because of the price. This is the one that Quick Performance sells, and it was only $70, so that's why I ended up getting this 1350 series. Now what I will just simply do is run a conversion joint. Neapco and Spicer both make a conversion joint. You can get it at Napa. I'm not sure who makes the Napa one, but you can get a conversion joint that goes from a 1350 to a 1310 universal joint. So that's what I'll do for that. I actually ended up buying 2 installation kits, and I'll go over that in the next video when I show you how to install the carrier bearings. So when I walk through this, I would like to share with everybody, if you're building these in your home shop, your garage, your basement, wherever it is, some of the little things that that come up with idiosyncrasies with the 12 volt, and sometimes you need special tools, but you can get around the special tools if you just use some little tricks. So I'll try to go through that with this build. This is going to be a lot of fun, and it's very important to me because the Chevelle's sitting still right now, and I cannot stand having the Buick sitting here, the Falcon sitting here, and the Chevelle sitting here, and none of them on the road. It's still summertime, fall is right around the corner, so I am hoping to get this 12 volt back in that Chevelle, get the Pontiac out of it so that I can make some passes at the drag strip, hopefully. But if that doesn't happen, at least we'll be ready for the spring when that comes around to make some passes. So that's about it for this first video. I just wanted to go over it and share what I'm going to be doing next. And after we get through this, we'll get back on some of the other cars. But like I said, priority first. It's time to get the Chevelle back on the road. I'm sick of it sitting and leaking. So thank you everyone for watching.